This movie is a golden turtle.
I'll go wherever Ryan Gosling takes me. Well, welcome to the Space Turtle Show, the greatest show in the galaxy. And we're here talking about The Notebook today, the very famous, for a lot of reasons, romantic movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was my choice because I wanted to prime you guys up for, get a little bit of the feels in there, get a little bit of the simplicity in there before my next pick, which is The Holy Mountain and Jodorowsky. So I figured, we could relax our brains a little bit, watch this movie. And today we're also drinking some green tea shots. I don't know how you're supposed to call it as like a drink because it's not really shots, but green tea liquor
Green tea drink.
Mixed drink, yeah. I was about to get rosé for us because I was like, that would match the aesthetic. But in the mood to get hammered tonight, so
Tis the season.
Yes, and they look very healthy. Look, it looks like green tea. Looks so nice. And yeah, that's what we're drinking. Maybe if you guys want to drink along with us, I think it'll be fun. And so yeah, I chose The Notebook.
Well, this is a new segment we're trying to do where we just talk about the drinks because we're always drinking something, so might as well make it a thing.
Yeah, we're trying a couple new things during this.
A lot of new things.
During this episode, so stay tuned. We've got a couple segments planned out for you guys. But starting off with a summary of the movie, if you hadn't seen or heard or saw the recreation of the famous scene with Conan O'Brien and Ryan Reynolds, then I don't know what you've been doing. I don't know, living under a rock perhaps. No heart, no soul. I'm just kidding. But yeah, for this movie is pretty much just about this love story between these two young kids in the summer. In the countryside-ish? Like rural areas, yeah.
Wasn't it like Carolina?
Honestly,
it was like a real city.
I never pay attention to those details. Remembering that Columbus was in Columbus was actually hard for me.
Wow. I was about to empathize with you, but that's incredible.
But yeah, so they fall in love, then summer comes to an end. She's going to this high-end school, her family's rich. Mom goes, "You can't marry him, he's too poor," pretty much. And then, they get in their little fight and may or may not get back together. Since this is a spoiler review, they do get together again. So, unless you stop, right before that, you might as well already have seen the movie or don't care if you're watching this episode, so.
Yeah, basically. And, for my first thoughts, I would say it's kind of mid. I was not impressed with this.
No, it's a golden turtle.
It
guys.
Wasn't.
Defend me in the comments.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one because we don't disagree very often on the show anyway. So this would be fun to at least talk about. But it's not anything special in any way or any form as far as I'm concerned. It felt like one of those romance novels you find your 40 or 50-year-old mom, they have it on the shelves, and it's built
with the
to be
shirtless
like
guy on the front cover.
With the yes, totally. And Ryan Gosling's the perfect person to play this. He's such a great shirtless guy. I'd say one of the biggest bonuses of the movie is Ryan Gosling being sexy.
Yeah, I mean we're watching it in preparation of Barbie 2, obviously.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm so excited for that. I know it has nothing to do with it, but he looks kind of good. He's a great Ken. But yeah, it wasn't anything special, but I don't think it was all that bad. There's a lot of good things about it. It has a very sparkling hope, very much a 90s charm, even though it's only 2004, I believe. So it's interesting to see a movie like that so late after the 90s, and I can tell why it was successful because people are feeling nostalgic and reminiscent, and it definitely feels like that. It has the Forrest Gump kind of demeanor to it, and yeah, so I would say opening thoughts.
Yeah.
Pretty mid, but endearing. It's fun for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're not even wrong with the comparison because it is based on the Nicholas Sparks, right?
Yeah,
book.
totally.
So it's definitely a romance book. So yeah, you're getting that. And there isn't too much that's impressive with the translation to screen, but there are a couple. I feel like everything is just good enough for when I watch it that there's a couple moments that just pique my interest a little bit, and so it's just such an unabrasive film. It's almost like a comfort film, It's like nothing really goes wrong, but also there's not really any bad people in it. Like, you're not afraid, or like they're gonna get together. Even if you're watching it for the first time, I'm pretty sure you kind of know that they're gonna get back together.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, yeah, a great comfort film. Not anything I get mad at, so it's not like the cinematography is great or the soundtrack's great or anything like that, but it's nothing that points to the fact that like, oh, this isn't good. Everything's just good enough. And then some things like the Rachel McAdams and mostly Rachel McAdams, but also Ryan Gosling's performance just kind of tip it over for me. So it's always had a pretty a place in my heart, I guess. Very charming, very hopeful. I have these like bouncing from like really cynical to like really romantic that it really throws most people off. I remember we watched Amelie as one of my movies during one of the earlier seasons.
Old school space.
Yeah. Anyone remember those episodes?
True fans.
Yeah, no video episodes.
Only friends and family, probably.
But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this movie. I think Amelie's better, but
yeah. I would say one thing though, James Marsden, I expected him to be a dick because every kind of movie like this, it would be making him a dick, but they didn't do that, and it made Rachel McAdams' choice a lot harder. And I was, that she's going to pick Ryan Gosling, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if she don't know? Oh, yeah. But what if she didn't know?
I honestly want like a spin-off movie with his character, because it's like they kind of gloss over it, but like just imagine he's like, whatever choice you make, I'll be devastated either way. Like, I know you go for him, you'll just hate me anyway, so I might as well let you go. And she's like, yeah, bye. So he's like just left to the waysides.
I would have stuck with James Marsden. Truthfully, I don't even think their relationship is very good. I think it's kind of toxic, which is something we'll probably get into a little more.
Yeah,
but
I get
it's
that.
Over passionate and argumentative, and it reminds me of a certain movie, but I'm going to save that because that's a segment.
Yeah.
But the certain movie I'm thinking about is much better. Mm-hmm. It's just that they're so passionate and so aggressive with each other. It reminds me of a relationship that's doomed to fail. And in the end, with the movie being what it is, they claim it's like some serious version of love and this ideal version of passionate love, when in reality, that's generally not the case with love itself. So that's one thing that I didn't like about it, was that it felt unrealistic. It set unrealistic expectations for love, and in that way, it's kind of dangerous. You probably have people going out there that are expecting that to be the ideal version of love, and they'll find an abusive partner like Ryan Gosling, and they'll take advantage of them.
Ryan Gosling being an abusive partner in romance movies. A long line of films.
Part 6.
Very many.
He's really good at it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there are certain aspects like that, but I think sometimes if you just watch it as an adult and maybe not like a impressionable mind, I think it's, like I said, a very good comfort movie. And it's like, they've got the little charge in their relationship that's definitely toxic if we watched it go on for like 2 hours straight, but because they're always like plucked away from each other and put back, it's like, oh man, come on, you can't dislike it whenever they're like, oh man, we haven't seen each other in so long. It's going to be super passionate, super amounts of love.
Now, I will say, Ryan Gosling is so good at gaslighting. He's an expert at it. In my head, I'm thinking, wow, Ryan Gosling is so hot and cool. But then he says, what comes out of his mouth, I think, ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's kind of funny. But anyways, so those are our initial thoughts. Moving on to the first segment, I would say.
Segments.
Yeah.
Wow, we're trying something.
Yeah.
Trying to be organized.
Yeah, we're trying to transition the conversation into a little bit more sectioned off so that we can have these places where you guys can skip to if you want to listen to, like, the first one's going to be a comparative movie that we've thought of while we're watching this movie. And so if you guys just want to listen to, I know it's like an hour-long conversation.
Well, the first one's the scene one.
Oh, I don't know why I thought it was the movie one. Yeah, the first one is the scene one. That's right. So the person who picks the movie, which is going to be me, is going to choose a scene that they want to talk about. And I think it'll transition really well because of what we're just talking about.
Yeah.
And that's going to be about an hour and 10 minutes in when they've separated. Ryan Gosling's built the house, and Rachel McAdams comes to visit him because she sees his picture in the paper, and he invites her to stay for dinner. And that's the scene that we're going to talk about. One day maybe we'll put it up, or a couple seconds of it maybe, if it doesn't crash our computer.
Ideally, it would be so cool if we could talk about it and then show in the scene what we're talking about while we're
Yeah,
talking
like
about
pausing it. We get a little green screen in here.
Oh, that would be so cool. One day. Maybe like 5 years from now if we actually ended up being successful.
I just gotta save up enough money for a PC, guys.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You guys gotta watch all the way to the end and like and subscribe then. Maybe I'll get the money.
Exactly. You guys must subscribe. It's gonna take an army for us to get a PC computer. But anyway, what made you pick the scene? What was the scene?
Yeah, so I think it has a lot of specific elements that I think kind of paint a picture of the whole movie, and specific things that I liked, disliked, and I think it's just, you could extrapolate a lot from the scene about how the whole movie is, about our feelings from it. And so the first thing I want to talk about is, of course, the conversation. I liked that there was moments of pause in the conversation, and I liked how there was an emphasis on body language and not exactly verbal communication. And, it's not the most deep thing or anything like that, but it gives these little hints of things in the movie that are a little bit better than like the normal rom-com or romance movie that's all about like talking and discussing and that kind of stuff. And if I had, universal pick of my movie comparison, I would have done Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but I'm going to save to do this movie as Portrait of a Lady on Fire's comparison in the next episode. So,
wow. Okay.
Well, now,
that should be a fun one.
Yeah, once you guys have seen both of them. But, a lot of gazing in that movie, and there's a little bit of gazing in this movie too, so it obviously doesn't dive into it as deep as Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and so it doesn't get my accolades for it. But I noticed like there are more body language or lack of discussion, but more like there's a lot of fate, I guess, in this movie, and so that kind of builds that. And then another point about that scene is the point to the piano, and how he references back like the room and this is where it was and everything like that. And I think it's the most cheesy and almost borderline bad way to reference back to their original relationship, but I think it serves most of its purpose because after we've been away from the characters for a while, you are hoping that they come back and they reconnect, but it's like this kind of middle period here. And so I think that scene / action that they do, cut that they do, points back at that piano in that room to kind of give us a link and be like, hey, do you remember like back then they were so in love? This is the room where they were in a scene that they were the most in love in, pretty much. So it's kind of like, yeah, they're still as in love as they were back then, or at least they're trying to signal to the audience, like, hey, yeah, I know it's been a long time since they've been together, but remember that really cute scene that we put earlier in the movie? You should think about that now.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the biggest cheerleader of this movie, but I will say this is one of my favorite scenes because of the subtlety they use in their expressions. They're talking about the piano and they're talking about having sex in this room, but it's all an innuendo, and it's generally referencing their larger relationship at large without saying, hey, you remember when we were a couple years ago, we were just the greatest couple ever.
Yeah.
And they just go in this literal reminiscent, but no, they have this subtle body language in this talk. And with this scene, I think what I want to go over the most is, because it's not as big of a story for me, the story isn't as big for me, but the cinematography for that scene is what kind of stood out for me. It's a very basic form of cinematography, what they were using here, but not in a bad way, right? It's just a classic form of cinematography where you'll notice when they're having the dialogue in the scene, Rachel McAdams' face is always in the medium. Is it a medium? I don't think it's a close-up, but it's not a medium.
Yeah.
Something in between that. Shoulder up.
Yeah.
I don't know I'm not a very technical person. We didn't go to film school or anything. But she's always on the left side of the screen. Mm-hmm. Whenever Ryan Gosling talks, he's always on the right side of the screen. But they're generally right center, left center. So whenever it cuts back and forth to them, it makes you feel like they're in a dialogue and you can understand the direction of where they're facing and what they're trying to do, which is something that not a lot of people talk about in cinematography, is those little things, right? And then all of a sudden it gets in a rhythm. It's a comfortable rhythm. They're talking like that. Ryan Gosling all of a sudden he brings up, hey, this is the room where we had sex.
Yeah.
She's like, what? Cinematography changes.
Yeah.
It zooms out. You get a sense of the gravitas of that situation, and it changes around. So I think it's a good lesson of kind of the basics of cinematography and how you create the emotional resonance without the acting or the writing or anything, because the cinematography is working in conjunction with those as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's like the continuity of the dialogue, and then right when you're talking about when they show the piano, it like takes out that continuity by going like past the line between the two. And so it like really signals it in. And honestly, to a degree, it's a little crass and a little bit low class. I wouldn't even say writing, to be honest. Maybe just like if I were imagining Ryan Gosling's character, it makes sense, but Rachel McAdams maybe a little less. But they've always been kind of raunchy and like they get in their fights and stuff like that. So it's like, on one hand, it's like this is kind of on the nose type stuff, but on the other hand, it's like not abrasive in my opinion. It's kind of like doing basics, like you said, and I think that's one of the good aspects of this movie, that I think they recognized the talent of the two main characters. And even like the old couple, I think. And they didn't do too much in the scenes to interrupt their flow. They did do a little bit of cutting back and forth in like time that was a little bit jarring. But in terms of everything else, I thought that, like I said before earlier in the podcast, is that like everything seemed to just be satisfactory. And so when I get to brain dead, not think about cinematography, music, or all that kind of stuff, and then just watch Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling, that's where I find a lot of the positives in this movie. And so that was part of why I wanted to bring up that scene too, because it's very simple. It's even slightly crass, but you kind of give it credit, because I can imagine Ryan Gosling just being that abrupt, because he just sells that type of character that he plays a lot. But
not to go over this again, but he's allowed to say things that most guys are not allowed to say because he's very hot. You know?
I mean, pretty privileged.
If he wasn't so hot, he would be fucking weird. Like, walking up a Ferris wheel, alright.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely hard. Like, yeah.
I mean, that's so abrasive and kind of terrible, but also, that kind of is endearing. Like, you're hanging off a Ferris wheel for
it's
someone.
Going so far it's like, come on.
At that point, come on.
And she plays it so well too. She's just like screaming. She's like, "No, get down!" And he's like, "No, I'm gonna let go." And she kind of like gives him the body language and even the tone that she's talking, that he's like successfully doing it, which I can't imagine exactly what would happen if she flat out just rejected him and he's like, all right, what am I gonna do, actually kill myself now, like that. Like, obviously I don't think he would do that, but there is a little bit of that play back and forth, so it's not completely unrealistic, because it's like, if you kind of know the girl likes you, but it's a movie, so. But yeah.
It's like, that's a big thing with this movie. It's a movie.
Yeah.
that's what I find myself saying after every, 5 minutes.
Sometimes it's
a movie.
But yeah. So those are our thoughts on that scene. Let us know if you guys picked out any other things that were special about that scene, or what was your favorite scene. I mean, I knew I had a hard time, just mostly because there wasn't an entirely scene, like a scene that I was entirely head over heels for, but there were a lot of scenes that I like to highlight a couple things. Like, I really wanted to talk about the dining scene with the old couple, because I thought their performances were great too. But yeah, so I ended up choosing that scene. Let us know what your favorite scene is, and that's all I have for that.
I guess we're on to the next segment.
Yeah.
So the next segment we're trying to do is...
Spoiled it.
What? Oh, yeah. We already touched on it. But we have 2 questions. Well, 1 question each, and we're each going to ask each other the question, and it's going to kind of give us an insight of how we feel about the film personally, or what we think about it inside history, or whatever we want to do, really. It's a very free and open segments, because we always ask each other questions anyway. We figure we might as well make it professional. Yeah,
it's like focusing most of the discussion about like other movies, or like the zeitgeist, or like society and that kind of stuff, with the second 2 segments, so that we can get the first, pulling a scene from the movie gives us some time to talk about the movie and like get our discussions about, and then we talk about everything around the movie, everything like socially and all that kind of stuff, which we did kind of like stumbled in here or there before, so hopefully this is a little bit more organized. But
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Did you want to start, or me?
Sure, I can start. I've got more of a personal question. It's gonna open up the real Josh to the people listening.
I'm ready to be vulnerable.
It's not actually even that much, but I was just wondering, because you like this movie a lot, this is more of a personal movie to you. I feel that you have a soft spot for this movie, and I'm wondering, what about this movie gives you that soft spot? Or where were you at when you were watching it, or what's your personal connection to this film?
Yeah, so this is a pretty good question. I don't exactly remember when I first watched this movie, but I think what really strikes me personally is like, I have this kind of expectation. Everyone kind of has an expectation when you go into a film, and generally I have 2 bigger hats, I guess, to put on to put it in a like visual way. One is when I'm about to go into a really artistic film, or one that's acclaimed by a lot, like a classic or something like that. And generally I put on I'm gonna like enjoy this film, and kind of just think about the greatness of every like scene and cinematography, and just how the movie was put together. And then other times I'm watching a movie that I don't know, my parents told me are watching with the family or something like that, and we generally, I don't know if this is with every family, but I have a feeling it is, that they really like cheesy romance movies or something like that.
It feels pretty common to me.
So pretty much whenever I'm watching a movie that's not with Joey, I'm like putting on like I'm gonna hate this movie and I'm just gonna like roast everything about it, which is really bad. You shouldn't do that. I mean, I try my best not to, but I think I got into that mindset with so many classic or like romance movies, not like the classics like Casablanca or something like that, but like the 90s like romance movies. And I had to watch a lot of K-dramas when I was in like middle school and high school because my family liked that. And so I just hate like small little inconsistencies and that kind of stuff. And when I watched this movie, I put on that cap, and there are not great things about this movie, you know, plenty of those, and not like mediocre things. But in terms of there not being a villain in this movie, like even the mom gets her piece of the pie, I guess, her say and everything.
She gets her humanity seed.
Yeah, and then you have James Marsden, which you said was refreshingly not an asshole.
Yeah.
That ties tying together the portions from the future, so you kind of know that they're meant to be together. It became like a very I expected to hate this movie, but it kind of proved me wrong, and that's why it kind of made a significant mark in my thoughts of this movie, as in contrast to like if I had gone in this movie thinking it was like a good artistic masterpiece, and then I was like, oh yeah, it's not, then that might have been a lot more forgetful, you know.
Well, and come on, also Ryan Gosling, right?
I know, I was going on a Ryan Gosling binge, probably, like my yearly Ryan Gosling binge.
Everyone loves Ryan Gosling, but I feel like you personally really like Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
I haven't met a bigger Ryan Gosling fan than you. Ryan Gosling's awesome, you know, he's great. He's got so many classic performances now. He's basically an icon. He's an icon of hotness also.
I just think he's so funny too. Like, I don't know why his humor, or like the humor that he plays, just generally gets like just hits me, you know. Like in this movie in particular, when they're in their summer love and they're at the bayou or whatever with their friends, and she's like trying to swing into the water.
Oh yeah,
and he's like, "Get in the water!" I'm like, bro, that's so funny. And then the friends come in too. They're like, "Get in the water!" He's like, "Get in the water!" Or like in like La La Land when he's like yelling at Emma Stone, he's like, "You baby!" I'm just like, that's so funny. I don't know why.
He's an underrated comedic actor for sure.
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't seen The Nice Guys,
yes,
please watch The Nice Guys. I swear to you, it's such a great cult classic, and Ryan Gosling is so good.
Yeah.
He's such a great comedic actor, even in dramatic works. I agree. And that's another thing about Ryan Gosling, is he can go full depresso.
Yeah.
He can go no comedy at all, and it never surprises me when he is just sad the entire time.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's gonna be my my spiel on that. Do you have any comments or anything that surprised you or anything like that?
Nothing other than Ryan Gosling. I just want to bring that up.
And coming to my question, there's this weird little pocket of Nicholas Sparks movies and like John Green films, you know, adaptations of these, I guess, pretty real. I wouldn't say realistic as the romance realistic, but just like no one's like super or anything like that, you know, like down to earth, like The Spectacular Now and that kind of stuff. Do you think that there is going to be a resurgence of that in the coming years, or do you think we're still on a decline of those types of romance movies in favor of, I guess, different? Or like, what do you think is the current atmosphere of romance movies, and whether? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Sure. Well, first of all, I will say, I feel like you cannot compare John Green and Nicholas Sparks. John Green is much better. As a John Green defender, I will continue to defend.
I don't know, there's some haters out there. There's some haters out there.
There is some, but not as many as Nicholas Sparks.
That's true.
Everyone hates Nicholas Sparks. But, well, not everyone. Clearly, he's got his own film genre. He's pretty successful. I've heard Dear John is like okay, you know.
Yeah, my sister liked that movie.
Other than that, I feel like he's made, well, not him personally, but movies based on his books have been.
And for the record, this is like the only one that I'm like slightly positive on out of all of them. So
you know, and this one was a lot better than I expected. Even from the beginning, when it had like the whole red sunset, I was like,
yeah,
wow, like that looks good.
I'm telling
That's
you,
a film.
It's all about inserting that old couple in there. I think it kind of elevates it just a tad.
I
like the old couple. Okay, but
I like their acting, but I don't like their story. Anyway.
Oh yeah, well, I know, but yeah, we can get into that.
Yeah, I feel there's been a bit of a resurgence recently, maybe not recently, like 5 years ago. Like you said, Spectacular Now, Perks of Being a Wallflower, these coming of age movies, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, where it has, it takes the coming of age movie and the romance movie, kind of puts them together, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big thing with romance. Young love is something that apparently everyone is interested in. No one cares as much about 30-year-olds falling in love or 40 or 50-year-olds falling in love. But everyone cares about young love. So they kind of put these two together, and I've loved what they did with that, even though it's kind of dying off again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't see very many movies like Spectacular Now, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl.
For sure.
So I really have maybe it's some nostalgia for that period of time also, but I like the way the romance movie has elevated into that, because having romance in and of itself, well, obviously it can definitely take an entire movie to talk about romance, but including it with many other things that people are dealing with, because having those contextual elements adds a lot to what romance is, because that is what romance is making sacrifices around everything else in your life as well. So I like what it does with that. And I feel like we're kind of destined for another boom shortly, right? I mean, that kind of thing was early 2010s. We need more.
Yeah. Well, I asked you because I don't know. So I think for me,
Fault in Our Stars also is an example of that new age of.
Yeah, but that's what I'm thinking. I think for my thoughts are kind of like that's like pure romance, and there is a bit of an aspect of coming in, just a tiny in this movie. But I don't know. Honestly, they're supposed to be 20-year-olds, and they might have been 20-year-olds, but I don't know. Just older films, they make them look like they're like so old. So
they were 23 because I looked it up and I was like, "There's no way they're that old," and they were 23.
They were 23 when they moved. They don't look 23 when they moved.
I know, man. I know. It's crazy.
But I think in the modern age, it's like a little bit of a mix now, like you were saying, romance and coming of age, because that's like where that's like the young part of this movie where they're actually young. That's where you can get away with a little bit of the romance that's abrasive, like in the beginning, and tell a coming of age romance story, and a cautionary generally too, because if they have like heavily romance in coming of age, they can be like, oh yeah, but this isn't great, like for later on and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other hand, it's like rom-coms now, so it's like they have to have a comedy.
Sorry.
They have to have comedy in the romance. So it's been a little while since I've seen like a pure romance film, except for Portrait of a Lady on Fire. But
True. And that one, I mean, come on, that one's so good. I can't wait to talk about that one.
So I am hoping that it comes a little bit more, because I do like. Well, I'm not that big of a fan of rom-com, but I do like the coming of age romance. But I do want, like, a couple years from now, I'm not going to be coming of age anymore. I mean, it's horrible to think about, but if they keep coming out with more coming of age romance, I'm going to be like, oh man, I can't relate to like a 14-year-old.
I will say one thing. This is a good way for me to bring in a weekly complaint about how movies today we're so focused on being meta analytic and deconstructing relationships and ideas, and at this point it's starting to lose some steam because it's so played out how Yeah, everyone's self-aware. The movie has to be self-aware of its own cliches and ideas. And I think in the next coming years, I think Top Gun is a great example of this, that people are going to start swinging back towards real, genuine, heartfelt movies and ideas. And I don't know whether that's a bad or a good thing. Actually, for me, I'm tired of meta. I'm tired of meta movies, for sure. So I think with that swinging pendulum back, I think we're going to be able to see more genuinely romantic movies, because in our generation it feels like if you're genuinely romantic, you're like made fun of. Like, if you're genuinely anything, you're made fun of, right? No one can be genuinely passionate about anything or anyone.
There's no real love nowadays. It's always just like, haha, you're in love. It's like what is that show that's out right now? Euphoria, you know?
Yeah. You're in love? What a bunch of losers you guys are. But you know, I feel like that's going to swing back a little bit.
I hope so too. That concludes my question.
Yeah, there's another segment done.
Awesome. And so for our last segment of the new 3 ones, we're both going to think about a movie, or we thought of it. So we're both going to present a movie that we wanted to discuss in comparison to this movie. And so I think...
well, and this is like a recognition of... this is something personal to me. I've always felt that when people talk about movies on YouTube or film discussion podcasts or shows or something, it's not exactly realistic, as in every movie fan talks about movies not as if they're in a bubble, but as in comparison to other movies and other ideas in the filmmaking world. So this is kind of a recognition of this movie is being talked about in comparison to its peers.
Yeah, I agree. And you guys know, of course, that I wanted to bring up Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but can't do that because our next film is going to be Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And even though I think I'm going to talk for an hour and a half with that movie, I don't want to take any of the discussion away from them. So if you guys want to hear my thoughts on the comparison of Portrait of a Lady on Fire with The Notebook, then you guys got to watch the next episode.
And you're such a good businessman.
You got to do it, man. That's it. Everything's connected.
There's no choice.
But I guess if I want to start off with mine, then that I chose the movie Aladdin as my comparison.
What? All right, this should be fun.
I think there's 2 big things that I want to talk about. The first is I've always felt that The Notebook is a very princess-like movie. It has the rich, privileged but constricted girl that has parents that want the best for them in terms of like class and social and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the rugged, like everyman boy, almost like Princess and the Pauper type thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was going to be one Disney movie, like Disney princess movie, that I was going to bring up for this comparison. The second reason that solidified me on Aladdin is I'm really interested in how they tackle the being poor or like being out of class in these 2 movies, and how much an active and passive protagonist can change in a movie and how that affects theme. Because I think that in Aladdin, he makes it his mission to prove himself as not being poor, or like to at least make the vision that he is not poor and that he can get the girl by disguising himself as some prince from another instead of the pauper that she fell in love with. And in this movie, none of the 2 really do anything. They kind of just sully and just happen to cross paths. And I think that is probably the best way to go about it if you're going to want to make a very hopeful and romantic film, because you have to maintain that their love is fated and that their love is like inevitable. So it's a little bit different to have the characters really go after each other really hard. And I think that is something that sets this movie apart, is that, like, for better or for worse, you know, but at least in terms of the theme that they're trying to trying to show the audience is that their love is true, and they die together at the end, so very, very melodramatic. And so it just happened that they both just do their own thing, and they just keep crossing paths, and it's like you can't avoid each other. Whereas Aladdin, it makes it a lot less about the romance and about like his whole journey by having him take on the power role, or like the change. He's like actively doing things to get the girl, and then fight Jafar and all that kind of stuff. So that movie, although better than this movie probably, but it just shows how if you were to put like the main character of Aladdin in like The Notebook, it'd be a lot less of a like pure love, hopeful, faded movie, because the main character would be doing active stuff to get the love, and because they're doing active stuff to get love, it's a little bit less faded, because
I didn't know where you were gonna go with the Aladdin. I didn't see it coming, but now that you explain it, it makes a lot of sense. I'm totally on board with this comparison.
I'm glad.
It's it is a common archetype with the Princess and the Pauper, like you're saying, and I didn't think about it that way until you bring it up, but they definitely have all of those similarities. And while Aladdin is a very different film as far as like it's a musical, it's an epic, it's animated, but in general the heart of the film is the same. And where The Notebook will focus more on the romance and a more realistic depiction of adult life or more modern life in this scenario, but they do focus on two different things, or two similar things. The exact opposite of one. And I do see that, and it's while I do think The Notebook it takes itself a little bit too seriously at times. But it does have these similar principles to Aladdin. And it does treat them very similarly. But sorry, I went on a little tangent there. But I would say it just reminds me of something that I've never seen it the other way around, Like I've never seen a prince and like a poor girl. It's just like it just kind of reminds me of that. I'm like, that's.
I feel like I could think of one if you gave me enough time, but off the top of my head, definitely not.
Well, we'll have to maybe if someone's made it this far, ask us in the comments.
50 Shades of Grey.
You're right. 50 Shades. I've never seen that movie. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
We should do an episode on that movie sometime.
There's also me and Cameron and Steven watched Me Before You.
What's that?
It's the movie with the girl that plays Daenerys in the epic lore.
Like Game of Thrones?
Yeah, Game of Thrones.
Daenerys Targaryen?
Yeah, she plays like this poor girl who gets hired on to take care of this guy who's like rich and famous, and he got into an accident, so he's paraplegic. He's all like from the neck down, he's paralyzed. So
wow, that reminds me of the Untouchables. And also, man, why are the two movies, I mean, they're shit.
Yeah, because no one wants to see the guy.
No one wants to see the rich guy.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, that doesn't have much to do with the comparison, but it's just, I couldn't stop thinking about it, which is why I was talking in circles.
No, I think my biggest takeaway from that is just I was really interested on how the motivations and the actions of the main protagonists, like both of them really, one being active and one being passive, can really push the theme into like one side. And I know there aren't that many similarities between Aladdin and The Notebook, but thematically, like they start off in like a very similar place, but they diverge so far just because of whether the protagonist is active or passive. And I thought that was really interesting, so I wanted to bring it up.
Totally. And I guess for my comparison, if we're gonna keep going. I would say mine is the it's like late 1960s film.
Oh man, am I not even gonna
No,
know
you'll know.
this?
You'll
Okay.
know. The Graduate.
Oh, I do know this film. Yes.
The Graduate. So it's a very similar story. It's got Dustin Hoffman, and it takes on this university student who's kind of going through life and figuring out getting a job, and he finds this girl and they fall in love, and it's like your typical romance story where their families don't want it and it would hurt their careers, and they just fall in love and they do this anyway, and they finally say no to their societal pressures and they run away together and they get married. And the big difference with The Graduate, which is why...
Bad ending?
Huh?
Is there a bad ending?
Well, it's not a bad ending.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite films of all time, actually. It's my favorite romance movie.
Oh.
And it reminds me of The Notebook, but like better in every way. It's a very special. It's a very famous scene. If you would know it, it's the scene where they're in the back of a taxi cab. They just got married, and it just sits there and it looks at them for about 30 to 40, 50 seconds, and it just lets them show their faces and let them understand the reality of what they've done sink in, not in a bad way or a good way. It's not telling you they're going to fail, but I've never seen a scene so, especially in the 60s, to create so much complexion in realizing what they've done and in the spur of their moment and what their passion has led them to. And it's just so brilliant, and it's something that I feel like every romance film has to at least, because The Graduate exists, every romance film has to at least tackle that as the bare minimum.
Yeah.
You have to build off of what came before you, and this does that, and it's very similar to The Notebook, except for that one scene. Well, a lot of things different, but generally thematically, except for this one scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that moment of recognition is what this movie lacks, pretty much. They which I think kind of transitions into our thoughts on the older couple, because I feel like in comparison with The Graduate and what you were talking about, the older couple kind of hammers even harder into the themes of the movie, whereas I feel like maybe you're wanting a little bit more of a pullback just to like get a little breathing room from the melodrama and that kind of stuff that The Graduate had in that final scene. But I mean, I'm talking for you, so what did you actually think about the older couple? Or was there more that you wanted to
sure.
talk about?
Well, you're talking for me, but I agree with you. I agree with your thoughts for me. It's just that I liked the acting of the older couple. They really weren't bad. And every movie like this, I'm going to call it a 90s movie, even though it wasn't 90s. Every 90s movie needs narration.
Yeah.
Them's the rules. You need some whimsical narration about, wow, I was so star-strutted by this lady, and then you close the book like Princess Bride style.
Yeah,
like,
Princess Bride.
Well, we can't keep going. No, sorry.
You gotta eat dinner.
Gotta eat dinner. gotta go swimming. But you know, I don't always hate that. I don't hate that device, that storytelling device. I love it in Princess Bride, but Princess Bride is a satire of that device.
Yeah, I like that movie. That movie's good.
Well, it's more of a parody, I guess. But with this one, it's just hitting over the head things that you didn't need, or it just felt like it goes a little too far where their relationship should be enough. She doesn't have to get over dementia, which is not how she's not.
It's a movie, Joey. It's a movie.
See, that's what I have to remind myself. I'm like, all right, it's a movie.
No, yeah,
but you know, it's just not a very realistic depiction of dementia. It's just that's not how someone with dementia talks and acts. And it was very bothersome for me because I've got experience with that. But that was just it feels minor. It's just kind of since it was throughout the thing. And there's really nothing about this film that I don't like really truly dislike, other than maybe its portrayal of what love is like kind of problematic. But other than that, it's like just things that I think fell a little flat. And while the old couple, they were great actors and actresses, great actor and actress, as well as Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams, they're very similar in the way that they're good acting and bad storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I completely agree. I feel like one of the worst aspects of this film is writing, or just not even technically like screenplay writing, but just like from a story standpoint writing. Like I can totally agree how including the old couple is almost like unnecessary. Like especially because, well, I think that without it, the movie would be like an hour long.
Yeah.
So, but I think that both the Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling and the older couple's acting, they kind of take what they have and they run with it, and I think that's impressive. Otherwise, the other things are I just don't remember them, like music and cinematography and that kind of stuff.
A lot of forgettable stuff because it's just not very original, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not. It doesn't
It's
break
like
any new grounds or
strings
anything.
and like that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
But I think that with the old couple, like there is, for me, a criticism on should this be a part of the story at all. But when it is a part of the story, I do enjoy watching how there is this sense of sticking by each other till the very end, and it reiterates the where in The Graduate you have the scene where it's kind of like, oh, like this is what we've done, and that kind of recognition. This one gives us like, no, don't worry, like they did the right thing, like you don't have to think about it. They did the right thing,
Yeah. Of course I know what happened.
Yeah. And I think that's just whether or not like accurate or not, it's just I really felt emotional during this scene where she remembers, and the way that dialogue is handled, if not anything else, I think that's admirable, because the first thing she doesn't say is, oh, I love you so much. She says like, how much time we got, and like he was like, it doesn't last too long, and she's like, okay, this is what I want to do. It just brings out, like, I don't know why, but the Rachel McAdams way of portraying a character, that whenever she plays like a romantic interest, I never feel like she's just like an archetype of a girl. Like I always feel like she plays it as an intelligent person with intelligent thoughts and a plan. And most of the time in most of her romance movies, thinking like About Time, like she's always the one with like a plan and setting things up and that kind of stuff. And so in this one, it kind of matched with that. And whenever she starts to forget, like the way that he laments or like grieves it is such a defeated, even though he knows to appreciate the time while they had it. It's really hard, even if you know to appreciate the time, when it's taken away again, like you still feel defeated, even though you know that it's like, well, that's having that was better than having nothing. But he just sells that like defeated, like desolate, like cry, like pathetic cry, that I still get emotional, mostly because of the acting and a little bit of the dialogue. But yeah.
Well, I would say the acting really saves it to me. And as far as the dialogue goes, I don't like how much time we got.
Oh, really?
That's just so not realistic. You don't just wake up from dementia. It would just naturally slip in that they know what they're talking about. And I feel like you could do it so much better than that.
Yeah, I guess
like,
so.
Like you could just start talking about your son or daughter or something, and then you could have... It wouldn't even take a line. You would just be like, oh, and then you could see his face, and then you would know that he's working with her, and then it can slowly rise into that. And then by the time that they finally have a grasp of what they're talking about, then she starts to lose it again, and she can slowly lose it, and then you can see his face slowly start to decompress.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to write it. But I mean, what if we just don't call it dementia? We call it perpetual amnesia.
Yeah.
How about that?
It's a movie. It's just a movie.
But I do want to ask you one final question, maybe before we wrap up. Is how do you feel about this handling of an old couple flash forward or flashback? I guess. Well, the old couple flashes back, but to something like the Titanic or like other movies that have like an old, not The Princess Bride, because it's parody and everything like that, but another one that seriously handles jumping or being a romance movie that has like the ending already there, like Titanic.
Yeah, since you bring up Titanic, I feel like that's the easiest, and I would say I didn't love it in Titanic either. I guess I don't feel like it's a worthy storytelling device.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel that it's useful, or that, at least in The Notebook, well, in Titanic also, I just feel like it doesn't add a whole lot, and it's like, is the story itself not enough? Is this not enough for you?
Is this not enough?
Are you not entertained? With Titanic, I guess it blends a little better because I think it's just a better constructed film. But actually, they're very similar now that I think about them, Titanic.
I was thinking of bringing that one up too.
Yeah, they have a lot of those same dynamics. But anyway, I don't feel like it's I don't feel like it adds a whole lot, because if you had spent the time taking on the old couple and used it to add to the relationship between Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling. Oh, and also, I think Rachel McAdams is totally an archetype in this film. She feels like textbook, like cardboard cutout to me. But anyway, that I'm now giving you two things to work with. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, I think I agree. I feel like having old people like in a romance film flashing back is like, I think the only way it works is just if you're like me that just find this as like a comfort film, or just like you just approach it in like a comfort film type way, then it might help in the sense like, oh, they're gonna get together. But in terms of any type of storytelling grip, it's like it diminishes all of that. Like you there's no conflict, there's no like wonder or or just uncertainty when you do that. And I think for the most part that's a bad thing for stories in general. But if you go into it with the right mindset, then it can be good.
It adds to the tone too. It's like it's got that whimsical, nostalgic tone, so you have to have someone being nostalgic.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why is it so whimsical and nostalgic? So, it's a movie. It's
yeah,
a movie,
you know what? He probably didn't gaslight. It's just the nostalgia. He remembers manipulating her, but it's not really.
yeah, it's all in the story. It's
His writing is he's an unreliable writer.
Yeah, of course.
Well, final thoughts? I don't have many. I think I've reiterated so many times my thoughts already, because there's not too much to discuss about this film. Just happened to be a very comfort, regular, mediocre film that just a little bit of the acting, how much I love Rachel McAdams, how much I love Ryan Gosling, that just kind of peaks it up a little bit. And that's why it's always one of the cheesy romance movies that I go back to, which is saying something in my opinion, because there's really no cheesy romance film that I really like, except for maybe like Amelie, but you could even debate if that's like really cheesy.
It's not
there's
even
so much eclecticness in it. So
yeah, there's a lot to love with Amelie, really. But yeah, I'd say for my closing thoughts, it's unoriginal. It's it's pretty stupid, and
but
it
in
doesn't
an endearing way,
offer a lot but it's not so bad. It's in the spirit of uplifting, and it tells a fun story, and it's a easy, enjoyable watch, and it's entertaining. So it's really not that bad. But it definitely has a lot of things that I think could be harmful, like the portrayal of love in this movie.
Yeah, you guys,
a little bit harmful.
Just be an adult when you watch this movie, man. Why you being a child? Why you being influenced by this thing, huh?
This is a movie for children almost, but but you know, it's not really that bad. It's not even serious enough to be it's a serious harm. It's not even like important enough. It's just a fun, entertaining, poorly made movie.
That's what I was going for. Yeah, my choice.
Yeah, and not so bad. So that's my closing thoughts with it.
Yeah, and I think all in all, my score, and this is gonna be interesting because
I'm excited to hear you.
I don't know if you guys think we like talk about these, but we really never do, and they always just seem to be like really, really close. Like in Lightyear.
I hope it's not close. This is supposed to be the one we disagree on.
No. We'll see. I'm not exactly sure, but with Lightyear, I was thinking that one was gonna be the different one. And if you guys haven't watched that one, you should watch it because we really don't talk to each other about how we rate it, and somehow it just like becomes really close. But I'm gonna give this movie a crush and a squirt. Okay.
All right. That's not the same.
Terribly close.
Well, it's like a little close, but I would give it a Franklin and a squirt.
Okay.
So just 1 point down.
Not a bad score, I'd say.
Yeah, and I can imagine. Yeah, that feels about right.
Yeah, it's like a crush energy, just like chill. When I think about crush, I just think like I could chill and watch this movie. Very like the unbearable weight of massive talent type energy, and then
is that the same score you gave the Nicolas Cage movie?
I don't remember actually.
Oh my gosh, Nicolas Cage movie is much better made than this one. But anyway, we've had this discussion off screen.
Okay, and then we have Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling putting in their work, setting the stage for their whole career, pretty much for the rest of their I don't know, middle-aged years.
I mean, shit. Without those guys, what would this movie even be?
Exactly. You know? Yeah.
It would be like all the other Nicholas Sparks.
Yeah.
Probably.
And that's why I gave it a little squirt just for them. Just for Ryan.
Yeah.
Squirt for Ryan, squirt for Rachel McAdams.
So,
no, one squirt. Single little squirt
you
for
get
both of them.
A half squirt for each?
I'm this is like a like a 3 people type thing, and then there's just me.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. That's what
I was interested to see how you would.
Yeah, sometimes I just try to keep going, and then like it comes to me a little later what you said. But I also gave a squirt for them.
Yeah,
I just get a little squirt.
Yeah, of course. You have to.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. That's it. Oh wait, subscribe, like.
If you got it this far.
Yeah. We asked in the Lightyear review for someone to say "Keep it up, boys," and then someone actually said "Keep it up, boys," and we started like giggling. That was so cool.
So good.
So if you like it,
give us more guy, "Keep it up, boys."
Yeah,
we want more.
Give us the serotonin. We need it. Yeah, that's it.
Well, that's all we gotta say. Bye.